There's a company in the FTSE 100 paying one of the biggest dividend yields in the entire index, and this week its share price drifted to within a few percent of its 52-week low. Now, a yield that big at a price that low is usually a warning sign. But here's what makes this one awkward for me. Its closest rival is already in my portfolio. Same corner of the FTSE, same pressures, same reason most investors won't go near either of them. So this is the question I've been putting off. Is IMB a second chance at the income most people walk straight past, or the same bet twice? Quick one first, none of this is advice. I'm just showing you my workings, so please do your own research before you put your own money anywhere. And a warning, there's 1 year in this company's dividend history that changes how you read everything else about it. Most write-ups skip straight past that year. We won't. But let's start where I always start, with what it's actually paying you. If you're new here, every stock on this channel gets the same 5 questions. What's it paying? Is that a fair price? Can it keep paying? Has it kept paying? And why does it pay at all? So, question 1. IMB's yield is one of the biggest in the FTSE 100. The exact number's on screen because it moves with the share price every day, but it's comfortably clear of the index average. And it beats any savings account I've ever seen. And it doesn't arrive once a year. IMB pays quarterly, 4 payments spread right across the calendar. If you're weighing it up for income, the date that matters is the next ex-dividend date in late August. Anyone holding the shares before that day collects the next payment. So the income is big and it's regular, which is exactly what bothers me. If the market is letting anyone walk in and collect a yield this size, why? Here's the honest answer. The share price has been sliding for months, and it's now sitting within touching distance of its lowest point in a year. And when a price falls while a payout holds, the yield gets pushed up mechanically. So the real question isn't why the yield is high, it's why the price is this low. 2 reasons, and neither of them is a secret. The obvious one, IMB's core product is shrinking. Fewer people buy it every year across most of its markets, and the whole market treats that decline as structural. Nobody is pricing in a comeback. The quieter one is the bit hardly anyone talks about. A huge slice of institutional money simply isn't allowed to own this stock. Pension funds and big investment houses run ethical screens, and IMB fails them. When that many buyers are permanently locked out, there's a ceiling on the price. Put those together and you get what's called an exclusion discount. The stock isn't cheap because it's on sale. It's cheap because the market has decided it should always be cheap. But cheap is only interesting if the payments keep coming. So, can they? 2 questions down, 3 to go. And the 3 ahead are where this gets properly interesting. If you like UK dividend investing worked through honestly, question by question, no hype, subscribing is the best way to see more, and it genuinely helps the channel. Right, can IMB actually keep paying this thing? 3 things I look at, and the cards will carry the exact numbers as we go. First, dividend cover. How many times over the company could pay this dividend from what it earns? IMB's payout isn't scraping the ceiling, there's genuine headroom. Second, the debt. This company used to carry a lot of it. We'll get to why in a moment. And for years it worked that pile down hard. Last year it ticked up again, as the company stepped up what it hands back to shareholders. It's still comfortably inside its own target range, but that direction is one of the things I watch. And third, there's a buyback running on top. The company has been steadily buying in its own shares and cancelling them, and fewer shares means every future payout is split between fewer hands. You could argue the real cash return here is bigger than the headline yield. So on today's numbers, the payment looks solid. But today's numbers always look solid, right up until they don't. The question that actually separates dividend stocks is the 4th one. Has it kept paying? And this is the year I warned you about. For most of the 2010s, IMB was a dividend growth machine. The policy was almost mechanical. Raise the payout by 10%, every single year, and for years it delivered exactly that. The trouble is what was happening underneath. The dividend was growing faster than the cash behind it, and the debt was stacking up. Something had to give. In May 2020, it did. IMB cut the dividend by roughly a third. The company called it a rebasing. If you were holding the shares, it was a cut. A third of your income gone in one announcement. Now, you might be thinking, a company that's cut once will cut again the moment things get tight. That's a fair instinct, and I won't wave it away. The risk here is real. But it is trackable. Since the cut, the dividend has grown again every year. Smaller rises, off a more honest base. And the things I watch are specific. Another cut or freeze. The case ends that day. The cash generation rolling over faster than expected. Or a rule change somewhere that genuinely caps the business worldwide. If any of those flash red, everything on this scorecard changes. None of them are red today. How much that cut should worry you depends on the last question. Where does all this cash actually come from? So, question 5. IMB is what the market calls a controversial defensive. Its core product has been in decline for years, and yet the business throws off cash at a rate most FTSE companies would envy. That sounds impossible, so here's how it works. The old product needs barely any new investment. Demand fades slowly rather than collapsing, prices edge up as volumes fall, and the costs stay low. So even as sales shrink, the cash keeps coming. Alongside that sits a next-generation products arm. Newer categories the company hopes will eventually replace the old one. It's growing, but it's still the smaller part of the picture. And management is completely open about what this company is for. It's not a growth story, and it doesn't pretend to be one. It's a cash return machine. The business shrinks slowly, and the money comes back to shareholders as dividends and buybacks. That's the model. Boring, uncomfortable, and, so far, effective. Which brings us back to the awkward part from the start, because my portfolio already owns this exact story, which is where BATS comes in. The position is 4 shares held since May, and it's the reason this episode felt awkward to make. Because BATS and IMB aren't just similar. Same corner of the FTSE, same shrinking core, same locked-out buyers. If a regulator moves against one of them, or the decline suddenly steepens, the other is almost certainly getting hit too. There are real differences, and the card has them. IMB pays you more. BATS has the cleaner record, decades without a single cut. And that's why this is genuinely hard. A second name exposed to all the same pressures isn't diversification. It's a bigger helping of the same risk. The income would be real, so would the concentration. So the question I keep coming back to isn't whether IMB is good enough. It's how much of a portfolio should lean on one uncomfortable corner of the index. Let's put the whole thing on one card. So, IMB on a single card. The yield, one of the biggest in the index, and it's real. The price, near its 52-week low, held there by an exclusion discount that isn't going anywhere. The cover, genuine headroom, with a buyback on top. The track record, and there's the year that changes everything. Cut in 2020, growing again every year since. And the business, a shrinking core, serious cash, and a market that refuses to pay up for it. Here's where I've got to. Every number on this card says the income is real, and the one thing the card can't measure, how much of one uncomfortable corner a portfolio should lean on, is exactly where I keep hesitating. The risk is real, it's trackable, and I know precisely what I'm watching. So, would you buy it at this price? That one's yours. Tell me in the comments, would you own both of these or neither? I want to read the reasoning either way because it shapes what I dig into next. Month 5 of the portfolio lands at the end of July. Every pound tracked, as always. If you're working through UK dividend investing one honest question at a time, subscribing genuinely helps. Until next time, happy investing.